The list of shit things that are happening to me on this shit day is just increasing. My backup TikTok account just got banned for no reason for impersonating me. I got banned for impersonating me. So let's talk about some wins. There's some big wins for us for the rule of law. And once again, Donald Trump is losing bigly in court when it comes to his attempt to sabotage the 2026 midterms. We're waiting for that SCOTUS ruling, right? Defending birthright citizenship. We've heard that the regime's attempt to, actually all the right-wingers attempt to dismantle the last remaining components of the Voting Rights Act are not going to come in time. SCOTUS is likely to rule to dismantle the rest of the Voting Rights Act, but that ruling is not going to come in time for the midterms. Republicans in the Senate are not able or willing to overcome the 60-vote filibuster threshold, either by convincing Democrats, which is not fucking going to happen, or by voting to do away with the filibuster in order to pass Donald Trump's Save America Act, which would disenfranchise tens of millions of women voters. Now, yes, Governor Greg Abbott and the Texas Republicans, they were Donald Trump's little bitches, and they did redistrict Texas's map to gerrymander it even worse than it was gerrymandered before, but that's already backfiring, right? So what happens when you gerrymander is that you dilute the concentration, the strength of those deeply red districts and make them more vulnerable to flipping. And then also, they did that based on 2024 election data, but we know that the Latino vote in Texas is swinging much more blue than it did in 2024. So all that's a big clusterfuck. Plus, California, with the people in California decided to gerrymander to counteract what was happening in Texas. And right now, there is a referendum in Virginia to redistrict as well. In fact, I think I'm phone banking for that on Monday to call voters in Virginia and remind them to get out and vote. Virginia Democrats are calling this upcoming referendum on Tuesday a decisive stand against Republican gerrymandering pushed by Donald Trump and the GOP. We know that Donald Trump and the Republicans are in dire shape when it comes to the midterms because they don't want democracy to work. Like, if we look at the midterms, there's nothing dire about it in terms of democracy. If the people are allowed to show up at the polls and vote, do our constitutional duty, exercise our rights, then the Republicans are going to get voted out because they've been fucking with democracy, trying to dismantle it. And that means that Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Mike Johnson, the fascist GOP, they have to do everything that they can to attempt to hold on to power. They have to do everything that they can to thwart your ability to exercise your rights, right? They don't want democracy. They are deeply un-American. They don't want you to be able to vote. They just want to hold on to power. And so they're trying all of this shit, but the people keep pushing back. The courts keep pushing back. And as we saw this past week in Hungary, that when you have massive voter turnout, right? Something like 80% of eligible Hungarians turned out to vote and voted out Viktor Orban's party. Democracy works. Too big to rig is not just a saying, it's actually a thing. When you have massive voter turnout, you can overcome a number of the ways that Republicans are attempting to suppress the vote, to gerrymander, to disenfranchise voters. But it's crucially important that we all understand that we have power and we do get to we must exercise it at the ballot box. Come hell or high water, no matter how long the lines are, no matter how much they fuck with shit, we are all going to be voting. But we also need to be really aware of the fact that that's not all that's required of us. You better be making sure that, especially if you live in a Republican state, they're not kicking you off the voter rolls. You better make sure your registration is up to date. You understand where you're voting, what time of day. If you're doing mail-in voting, make sure that it is postmarked and delivered by the appropriate date. Republicans are going to do everything they can between now and the midterms to deprive you of your right to vote. And so it's really important that we are diligent and we defend our right to vote in the run-up to the election as individuals, but also as a resistance movement. There are people who are defending our right to vote like nonstop and have been since the day Trump took office. They're doing it through the courts. Democratic attorneys general like Dan Rayfield here in Oregon, they knew that Donald Trump was going to come for free and fair elections because this is the predictable playbook of an authoritarian, right? When the people get pissed off at all of the authoritarian shit that they're doing, all of the repression, all of the harm, the way that authoritarians fuck with the destroy the economy, drag us into needless wars nobody wants, have blatant overt corruption, right? Look at how fucking corrupt this regime is. When the people get pissed off at how Donald Trump and his regime are obviously engaged in a massive cover-up of the Epstein files, they are PDF file protectors, if not PDF files themselves. The people get pissed off at all of that. And the solution in a democracy is that you vote these fuckers out in the next election. So, with a would-be authoritarian, like, he's going to piss off the people because what he's doing is about escalating his own repressive tactics, enriching himself, oppressing the people. It's not going to be popular. What he does is not going to be popular with the people. And so therefore, the only way he can hold on to power is through illegitimate means. The only way that the Republicans can hold on to power is through illegitimate means. And that means they have to fuck with free and fair elections. They have to try and sabotage elections in this country. So anybody who understood the trajectory that we were on when this country reelected Donald Trump, they've been ready to go, right? Since day one, filing lawsuits to defend our right to vote. And you may know that Donald Trump has been trying to get voter rolls and voter information from all kinds of states. And a number of Republican states have just been handing him over. I think South Carolina just handed him over after admitting in court that they don't have a problem with undocumented non-citizens voting in elections. I mean, even the Heritage Foundation has had to admit that in like 1.3 billion votes cast, there have been fewer than 100 non-citizens who've attempted to vote in our elections. They want to come for all of that voter data so they can kick you off the rolls, so they can intimidate you, so they can they want data so that they can fuck with elections and erode our ability to exercise our rights. And a number of states are pushing back against this attempt to get voter roll information. And this week we have more wins in court when it comes to that. I'm going to read here from Democracy Docket. It's just a short piece from the day before tax day, April 14th. DOJ says Vermont was violating federal voting laws. When it was asked for evidence, it couldn't provide any. Boy, this is just... We could just play that on repeat when it comes to the regime, both their prosecutions of people in court that they say have assaulted ICE agents or DHS agents, and also when it comes to this voting stuff, they make claims that then when it goes to court, they're like, actually, we don't have body cam footage. Actually, you know what? We have no evidence. Oh, wait a minute. We made this claim, but when we're in front of a judge and there can be legal consequences, we can't bring the evidence. So the DOJ had to admit this past week that it has no evidence that Vermont is not complying with federal voter roll maintenance laws, an admission that can further weaken its case for amassing voters' sensitive data. Just reminding you, Kamala Harris wanted the most comprehensive privacy laws when it comes to American consumers, voters, and our data, making sure that neither the government nor AI mega corporations, Elon Musk, would have access to that stuff. We chose not to elect her, and instead, all of our information is being pillaged by Elon Musk and the fascist regime of Donald Trump and all the other technocrat bros. Thanks to electing Donald Trump and the fascist Republicans, we live in a surveillance state. We live in a state where our data doesn't belong to us. It is freely stolen from us at all times. Something to think about in the years to come, right? So the admission came in federal court this past Tuesday when the DOJ's lawsuit seeking to compel Vermont to turn over its full, unredacted statewide voter registration list failed. Much of the argument focused on whether the DOJ had articulated a legally sufficient basis for its demand. The Civil Rights Act authorizes the DOJ to request state voter records to assess compliance with federal elections law, but it requires the DOJ to provide a basis and a purpose for that request. A legitimate basis would be the Department of Justice suspects that a state is infringing upon the rights of voters in that state. It's meant to protect your right to vote. And as with many things this regime has done, they're turning existing law on its head in order to pervert justice. Think about the church protesters in Minnesota and the laws that they're being prosecuted under. Anyway, okay. The judge in this case said, does the government have any evidence at all to suggest that Vermont is not in compliance with the Voting Rights Act? And the DOJ attorney, Brittany Bennett, said, well, we're still in the investigatory phase. So that's what we could be looking at when we're looking at the statewide voter registration list, but she had no evidence. Vermont noted that the DOJ's letter demanding the voter rolls did not identify any specific concerns or deficiencies. Now, we need to understand that there will be fuckery continued in the run up to the elections, during the midterms themselves, and then afterward, because Republicans and Donald Trump have nothing left to lose. All of their eggs are in the basket of fucking with the midterms and dismantling democracy by denying us our right to vote and denying us our votes being counted. So we need to be prepared for what that looks like. I would recommend going to maydaystrong.org as a first step.